Alright, this is part 2 of our substitution series, and this is where we're going to start working through an example. I may break the example up into a couple different videos if it's taking a lot of time, just so that they're easier to upload and not as long on YouTube. And so first things first though is we need to know what information we need to have. We've got to be able to know our general feed classes. You're going to need to have to identify in these problems. A lot of times I'll tell you initially, but on the exam I probably won't tell you which ones are which. So understand that when we talk about the major feed in these problems, that is almost always going to be the forage. Okay, so the forage is the major feed. You're going to need to know your energy feeds from your protein feeds and possible mineral sources, and if they're a source of calcium or phosphorus. That's going to be easy to tell from the standpoint of if they're a high source of calcium or phosphorus. And like I said, the homework problems, I walk you through which ones are which, but on the exam, you're going to need to know. And then what we're going to do right now is work through a problem. Our example is that we have a group of hair sheep in Florida, just for fun because it's something different, that got to be fed better. So we're going to work through a substitution problem. So here's a picture of our hair sheep in Florida. And what we need to do is the first things first is gather our data. And what I've done for this problem is I have actually collected the data for you. And it is extremely helpful to build a table like the one you see that I have. It's in Excel just so it's neater because my handwriting is horrible on this thing. You're going to have to watch it enough anyway. But when we talk about this process here, what I want to make sure we're clear on is that the first thing we have in the table is the requirements of the sheep. Okay, and so these are some Katahdin hair sheep type ewes. They are eating about 6 pounds of dry matter per day. They are requiring 3.9 pounds of TDN. Notice I label the units as pounds per day. And so all of these requirements that we have for TDN, protein, calcium, and phosphorus are in pounds per day on a dry matter basis. All of this data is on a dry matter basis. And then we have these feeds available to us. And so the feeds that we have available to us is Bahia grass pasture. That's actually a predominant forage in Florida, and that is going to be our forage or our roughage source. Then we have citrus pulp. And if you look, as we evaluate the nutrient profile for citrus pulp, that's going to be our energy feed if we need to supplement energy. As we come down the list, we see that we have cottonseed meal, and when you look at it, it's a high protein supplement, so it's going to be our protein source. And then we have limestone in here as a calcium source, and dicalcium phosphate is actually a good source of both calcium and phosphorus, but it's in here mostly as a phosphorus source. So what we're going to do is work through a problem in a series of steps. And we kind of always approach this the same way. Usually our first step that we're going to do, bounce over to a whiteboard. Oops, let me get out of that. Step 1 is going to be solving for energy. Okay, in this case we're looking at TDN, but it could be net energy, it could be digestible energy, it's some form of energy. That's what we're going to solve for because it's the nutrient requirements. It's usually the biggest. And so if we're not even meeting their basic energy or caloric intake, we're not going to see the benefits of even worrying about the other nutrients. It makes no sense to worry about protein, calcium, or phosphorus if they're just not getting enough calories. So that's why we worry about energy first. The next major nutrient that we'll worry about is solving for protein, if that's going to be an issue. And so we're going to kind of always keep it in this order as we work through these. And so we'll be assessing how each one goes. Third is always going to be calcium before phosphorus. just because you always want to make sure calcium needs are met. And sometimes at the end of the problems, we also need to check the ratio of calcium to phosphorus. We always need that to be at least 1-to-1. So that's kind of a double check there. But that's going to be kind of our general process as we work through this example. And so what I'm going to do is close out this little video here that explains the problem, and then we'll move into the first part of solving the problem. So just make sure, let's take a second and make sure that you have copied down all of the data, set it up on your sheet of paper in a table just like this, so you have it in an organized format. And this information, just a reminder, is coming from, this came out of the book. I looked up the requirements for this group of sheep. And this is, we can get our nutrient composition data either from the book or that Noble feed library, either or. And so understand that I'll tell you which one to pull the data from in the problem, so be sure to clearly read the homework problems, because that's going to guide you through there. I'll make sure and try to conclude all the information you need. I know I've forgotten a time or two of some key information, but we'll work through that. So for this problem, we're going to be continuing in the next video, solving for these U's requirements using the Bahia grass pasture, possibly the citrus pulp, possibly the cottonseed meal, limestone, and dical. Those are what we have available to us. We may or may not use all of them, just to make sure you're clear on that. Alright, we'll move on to the actual problem in the next video.